who else after Iceland's Prime Minister? The Panama Paper revelations have claimed their first scalp on Tuesday after revelations that he and his wife forgot to disclose their offshore multi-million-dollar fund in the British Virgin Islands. But how much of a victory is the resignation of the leader of a small island nation of 230,000 when you're faced with 4 decades of documents from the law firm of Mossack Fonseca that expose a much bigger racket that keeps the rich and powerful several steps ahead of the taxman, and for the most part remains, let's not forget, perfectly legal? We're going to gauge reactions from France putting Panama back on its tax haven blacklist, Germany's call for a transparency register of genuine owners of so-called shell companies, and the UK opposition's call for direct rule over sunny overseas territories that keep cash in the shade. How far will political leaders really go in this fight? Today in the France 24 debate, heaven forbid, with us, Pascal Saint-Amand, director of the OECD Center for Tax Policy and Administration. Thank you for being with us.
Good evening.
He helped break the story, one of the main newspapers who've worked on Panama Papers for months, French broadsheet of record, Le Monde, joining us, Serge Michel, who also worked on the LuxLeaks revelations. And Swiss leaks as well. Frédéric Roeder, France director of the anti-poverty advocacy group WENTE. Welcome to the show. And Paris attorney Stéphane Bonifaci, executive director at FraudNet, an organization you say that works with the International Chamber of Commerce. Thank you for being with us. The France 24 debate, where you can join the conversation on Facebook and Twitter, hashtag F24debate. France had taken Panama off its naughty list back in 2012, but in the wake of this week's news, that's all changed. Kate Moody explains.
A financial scandal with diplomatic consequences. Panama's being put back on France's list of uncooperative countries and tax havens. That means cracking down on transactions between French and Panamanian companies. The 6 other current members of the list include Botswana, Guatemala, and the Marshall Islands.
We cannot be alone in doing this. It has to be a general movement. That's why I've asked the OECD to make the same decision for all countries involved. That way, Panama will stop causing trouble.
France removed Panama from its blacklist in 2012 after signing a bilateral deal to fight tax evasion. Then President Nicolas Sarkozy also played a decisive role in the G20's agreement to lift financial restrictions on the Central American country. This week, though, Paris launched an official investigation into the allegations of the so-called Panama Papers, which revealed the names of about 1,000 French taxpayers, among many others. Panama has been scrambling to defend itself since the leaked documents were published. The government said it could take retaliatory measures against France, which could include blocking foreign investment.
In Panama, there is a retaliation law against countries that include Panama on blacklists. We will not accept being used as a scapegoat for the actions and responsibilities of third parties.
The Panama-based law firm at the heart of the scandal has denied wrongdoing, as have many of the high-profile figures cited in the documents. But with the global spotlight firmly on Panama City, regulators around the world are looking into both individual cases and the country's financial system.
Pascal Saint-Amand, should Panama have been taken off that list by the French? And I noticed, by the way, that there's a blacklist at the OECD. There's a different one.
No, it's a complicated topic, the list. We did the list in 2009, when the G20 met at the level of the leaders for the second time, 2nd of April 2009, and we did list the countries which had refused to commit to exchanging information, or which had committed but had done nothing to implement that commitment. Panama was there, Switzerland was there, Luxembourg was there, and many other jurisdictions. And they all committed. And they all started implementing their commitment. And we moved away from that list because it didn't make any sense as everybody was progressing. What we've done is establishing a global forum, 133 countries which are members, to evaluate, to assess the progress made. And what we have seen is that Panama is one of the rare countries which has made hardly any progress. And in addition to that, we elaborated another standard back in 2014, which is automatic exchange of bank information, the end of bank secrecy, the fact that all the banks will exchange all the information, the financial information on all their clients, and they will give that to the government.
96 jurisdictions.
96 jurisdictions
over the next 2 years will sign on.
It will start effectively in 17 and 18 next year. And there are only 4 jurisdictions which have said no. Panama, Nauru, not a major financial center, Vanuatu, not a major financial center, and Bahrain, which is caught in something like a civil war.
But hang on, my math is correct. 96 plus 4 is 100. There's 190 countries on Earth.
Well, except that you will not ask Congo or some developing countries which are not financial center to commit to something, to have some obligations where actually they are not a problem. So what matters are the OECD countries, the big countries, the G20 countries, and the tax havens or the financial centers. This is the relevant constituency, if I may.
All right, but yet, and we're going to listen to Mossack Fonseca's reaction to all of this, the Intergovernmental Financial Action Task Force removed Panama from its list of uncooperative jurisdictions only in February.
We're amazed that nobody has said, hey, a crime has been committed here. We have already lodged a complaint, and there is a government institution looking at the issue and helping us. But there is nothing concrete. We have a theory, but no proof. We've just started investigating the issue. I'm a writer. I'm also a novelist. And I also like to investigate. I feel disappointed by modern investigative journalism. I'm very disappointed. It's not the investigative journalism that I read in my time, which was more impartial.
Serge Michel.
Yeah, sorry to laugh, but no, it's funny. It's funny. I mean, this man is part of a system. He's not the only one doing this kind of business. But of course, when investigation is about him, he doesn't like it. But this is investigation. I mean, we worked hard for months.
9 months?
9 months, yes. Mm. And it is a different kind of investigation. You don't move. You don't drive many kilometers. You just dig in computers and files and servers. But it is a very hard job.
And what's your reaction? What Pascal Saint-Amand was talking about a minute ago. You know, Panama. It's. I mean, there are these naughty and nice lists, and Panama has been taken off a lot of them in the last couple of years. How do you explain that?
We do not comment it. I mean, what we did is our job to reveal things that we got knowledge of.
If I may, the OECD has said, well, the list is over, but we've established assessments, and our assessments were saying, and we were reporting that to the G20, we have a big alert on Panama because they are slow in exchanging information on requests and not good at that. 5 years, they didn't make any progress. They have not committed to automatic exchange of information while all the others have done so. And they have not signed the legal instruments, a multilateral convention to implement. So that was a red line.
The Financial Action Task Force, though, took them off their list.
Panama has been very good over the past few months and years of exercising some form of political pressure on different countries to say, we're making some progress. And they made some progress, very little progress, but enough to be considered as, oh, they've made some progress, let's recognize that. But clearly it's very insufficient. And we've been saying that for some time.
But tell me if I'm mistaken, but the problem is not Panama itself. Delaware is very efficient as a tax haven, and there are other places. This time the leak comes from Panama or from a server that is linked to a Panama company. But I don't think Panama is the only problem here.
I'm not saying it's the only one. What I'm saying is that over the past 10 years, we've made tremendous progress. We need to recognize that. Otherwise, we fall into the populism, no progress, no change. Major change. No longer bank secrecy in Switzerland. That's a change. 10 years ago, who would have thought of that? So this is a real progress. That said, there is much more to do. First, we need to get all the countries commit to the standards. Then we need these countries to implement the standards, and we're not yet there. Many jurisdictions have committed, are implementing, but we're not yet there. And then, even if all the legislations are in place, you need to have these type of law firms to properly implement the standards. So we're just halfway, but we've done halfway. And again, the fact that 96 jurisdictions, all what we call the tax havens, saying we will exchange information. that's something significant. We have 500,000 people which have already disclosed their assets held offshore, 50 billion euros collected. Things are happening, and that's why now they are concentrating in the jurisdictions which refuse to move, like Panama. It's not the only one, of course, you're right.
Federica Roeder, your thoughts on this? Has secrecy been lifted in places like Switzerland?
I think the most important bit here is that there's much more to do. I mean, it's been said, we're now talking about the Panama Papers. A few months ago, we looked at the Swiss leaks, the Lux leaks, and so on. I mean, these leaks are coming in regularly, and what they show to us is that we haven't done sufficient progress in fighting opacity and illicit financial flows. And I think what needs now to happen is obviously that reforms need to be accelerated. And it's been said at the beginning of this program is, for instance, the reaction from Germany is very interesting. They now want to put in place a transparency register of the real owners of the shell companies. Because what the Panama Papers actually revealed is that shell companies are really at the core of the problem. So we really need to crack down on shell companies. The proposal has been around for years now. It's been discussed at the EU level. Germany was opposed to it. Germany was opposed to a public register. France was in favor, but still hasn't put it in place. So now I think what we need to do is we need to accelerate and concrete measures need to be put in place.
Let's listen to the Justice Minister. On Tuesday, he called for the creation of that so-called transparency register that would be, he feels, the undoing of shady offshore companies.
Shell companies, which still have an anonymous owner, must no longer be allowed. That's why we want to extend our money laundering laws and create a transparency register where the owners of offshore companies will be uncovered.
Frédéric, you said that before Germany was against. Were you surprised to hear this?
I was surprised, and now I want to see them put this measure into place. As I said, we had the same problem with France. France 2.5 years ago said that they wanted to put in place this public register. It still doesn't exist. Now Germany says it's in favor, but when are we going to see this register? I'm saying we can't wait for the next leaks. We really need to move forward now, and we need politicians to take the right steps.
Stéphane Bonifaci, in 2012, the candidate François Hollande promised he would legislate against tax havens. Of course, that hasn't happened yet.
Look, what I found interesting is an article in Le Monde, I think it was today or yesterday, saying that in the Panama Papers you had hardly any American citizen listed. And Le Monde was giving an explanation as to why that was. And the reason why that was is because the United States have a very strong policy on these issues and are at the origin of the end of the bank secrecy in Switzerland. And I don't want to diminish the OECD's role, which is great, but we have seen a policy put in place efficiently. And indeed, Europe is lagging behind.
But cynics would argue that it's also because the U.S. has on its own soil tax havens.
But that's nonsense, because if I am an American, I will not hide in the US. So this argument is just nonsense. I mean, that's something used to protect Panama. But that's a very fair point. The US has been in advance to protect itself. And that's why you don't have that many Americans hiding in Panama or hosted by this company. That's for sure. The US has its own problems. For non-US people, you can incorporate still in Delaware if you're not an American, a single LLC limited liability company. And if you don't do business in the US, nobody will know. It's an offshore company which is completely opaque. The US announced last week that they will put an end to that by the end of the year through regulation, meaning it doesn't need to go to Congress, which means that that's a serious progress. But I agree with Frédéric when she says that the next frontier is to put an end to the veil of secrecy on all these offshore companies, to have the name of the beneficial owners, and that's part of our standards. We need to get this implemented. The registry may be one solution. It's not the magic solution, because it depends on how you fill in this public registry. So you have a real question of the effectiveness of beneficial owner, and we need to join forces to make sure that we crack down on that.
Serge Michel, are the times they are changing?
Yeah, I think it's harder and harder to hide money. And what strikes me is that somehow Mossack Fonseca, I think 2 years ago, we found an email in their database, sent an email to all its clients saying, you know, some problems have happened to other companies, maybe mentioning HSBC and others. Don't worry, we have a very secure, very safe system, and we have an extra security measures and everything, and nothing will happen to you. And now this company has seen all its data being transferred to a group of 109 newspapers around the world.
We don't know the source of the leak. I know that it was originally Süddeutsche Zeitung, the German newspaper.
To be honest,
but it took one person, it sounds like.
To be honest with you, I don't know who he is or who she is, but someone has transmitted this data carefully during, over months, every week, sending several gigabytes per week, because it's such a huge trove that you can just file it in one day. And I don't know this person. I don't know where he is or she is now, but
or what their motivation was.
I think he has enjoyed kind of the impact of its action, but no, that's my guess. But the message is that it's not safe anymore. You can be Mossack Fonseca, you can have this company in Panama and subsidiaries in Switzerland, Luxembourg, Singapore, wherever. You are not safe anymore, and the competitors of Mossack Fonseca, I don't think they will get some new clients in the coming days, because the Mossack Fonseca clients will change from a company, but they will not feel very safe.
And that will be an impact, if I may, on Panama. Panama also hosts some sound investment. The World Bank is channeling all its investment in Latin America through Panama. Well, will they remain within a jurisdiction which offers so much secrecy, as there is a concentration of bad money? So they may lose good investors, which will create divides within the country. This happened in the past in Liechtenstein. You may remember all this work, all the progress started with the scandal of Liechtenstein, LGT Bank. It was in 2008.
The CD-ROMs that had been
yes, and since that time, you could have seen that Liechtenstein started a bit like Panama to shout and say this is a Nazi plot, they said, against Germany at that point in time. And now Liechtenstein is almost leading by example. They have cleaned up their trust industry. They've lost, I think, 30 to 40% of the trust industry, and they've made good progress. So we can hope that there will be such a commercial impact on Panama, which will make them think that joining the international community, making fraud, and it's not only tax fraud, it's corruption, it's money laundering, it's financing terrorism, is something which is not acceptable. We have globalization. We need to regulate globalization and not say sovereignty allows me to do whatever I want.
All right, reaction on Facebook from Martin. On one side, the media hails this as a huge triumph over secrecy and tax avoidance, while the other side is saying it's all legal, folks, nothing to see here. Who are we to believe? What are we to believe that? And are we to believe that Mossack Fonseca is the only firm involved? We'll be back. You're watching the France 24 debate.